Sharks bylaw. We don't want liquor stores. You know, we definitely don't want no more liquor stores. You know, she has a good one in her world, and people are very responsible. But the ones over in the 7, not that. So I'm working on those. So I'm glad to see you guys here today. I want to piggyback on what she said. We got to be creative on these corridors. We're putting the work in to bring businesses, viable businesses, to our corridors. We look for you guys with your entrepreneurial spirit. Some of you may want to own franchises. We're looking at that. But we want to develop our corridors. I agree. We probably won't go back to where it used to be. My family moved in the 7. So we probably won't go back to there. But you know what? Let's shoot for it. Let's shoot for it, and let's see what happens. So I'm glad we're going to be here today. Let's get the brainstorming underway. And we apologize, we do have to leave early. But while we're with the mayor, we're going to talk to him about bringing more resources to my neighborhood. So we're going to take advantage of this time. So thank you all for coming out, and let's get started.
I want to introduce Artie and Jake coming up. They're managing from the Department of Planning and Development in the city of Chicago. They are very key to a lot of things that we do.
That is.
And we work with respect to the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. So I'll let her. Give her a hand, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, we're going to try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Much better. So thank you to both Alderman Harris and Alderman Mitchell for hosting and for moving this ahead. Particularly thanks to you're going to hear from Florence Hardy from the Far South CDC, who is our neighborhood partner. Abraham Lacey's in the back, who leads that organization, but who's our neighborhood partner, which is a critical part of our process and our program. So I'll talk for just 2 seconds about, just for a second about why we're here and what we're doing, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Florence. But again, with thanks to both aldermen, the point of today is really about how we support our neighborhood commercial corridors, and 79th in particular, and how do we do that by lifting up the community as a whole, and in particular, entrepreneurs of color. It's that basic. It's not rocket science. It's not anything you all haven't talked about at your dinner tables, on your weekends, at planning sessions. And so the point of today is to really lift off the page planning that you all have been doing for years, Saturdays that you've spent sitting around tables just like this and trying to figure out how we lift up 79, how we have it look like, feel like what you want for your families, for your neighbors, for your children, for anybody, and also how in doing that, we lift up and bring along entrepreneurs of color. Give them the access to capital they need, give them the support they need, wrap our arms around all of you with love and with hope to make sure that we are supporting you in every way we can to build our communities together. Again, we know, and this is led on our side by our mayor, the mayor knows that we are only as good as all of our neighborhoods, and we are only as good as to the extent that we reach back and we reach out. So that's really the point of today. We hope that you will engage as we talk about, and Florence leads us into what you want and what we can do together. And then Jake and I will talk, and Kareem Smith, who also works with us at DPD, we'll talk about some of the resources and the ways that the city can help. But at the end of the day, it's going to be led by all of you. So we appreciate your time this morning, and I'll turn it over to Florence to get us to work.
Sure. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Oh, yes. I'm recording the session, so I don't think any of you are in it, but if you don't want to be in it, I'll put a black mark on it. So first, hi, everyone. My name is Florence Hardy. I am I'm the Senior Director of Business Services for the Far South Community Development Corporation. What we do under our Business Services Department is provide business planning assistance, financing assistance, marketing assistance to business owners, all at no cost. So whether you need help with a business plan, a marketing plan, finding a bank, finding a vendor, finding a supplier, we do all of that for you at no cost. We're funded by federal and state grants. So you can come in, no strings attached, to get the assistance you need to start or grow your business. Before we get started today, there was a mention that we're gonna do some type of ideation and brainstorming, and we're gonna do that before we talk specifically about the retail grant or this retail thrive program, because we want to make sure that we're bringing in the resources that you want for this corridor. We don't want to dictate how it looks, how it feels. We feel like there's ones who are going to be here working within it, so we want to make sure that we get your ideas out so that we can match them with our effort. Before we do that, did everyone sign in? I will. I have business cards, but I will also give contact information at the end. I will get it. Thank you. Everyone signed in? You did not? There's a sign-in sheet in the back of the table. If you did not sign in, please do so. Or, I'm sorry, it's at this table right here. Okay. If you did not sign in, please raise your hand. That's the only way that we can contact you for follow-up meetings and conversations to ensure that we cover everything or we do everything that is covered in this section. Next question. How many people are property owners along the retail thrive zone corridor? On 79th Street from commercial to Stony? Yeah. What did she say? Vergeer to Exchange, that's right. 79th Street, Vergeer to Exchange. Property owners?
Would a lot be considered property?
Yes, that is property.
Okay.
All right. On Halsted? Oh, you're further west. You fall under the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, which we can talk about briefly today if we have time. How many are business owners? Fantastic. And how many people are looking to start a business? Fantastic. So I'll see all of you in my office in January. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do something called a SWOT analysis. Everyone know what a SWOT analysis is? I see some yeses, I see some maybes, so I'm just going to do a brief overview. So a SWOT analysis gives you the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of a specific program, project, company, what have you. In this instance, what I'd like us to think about are those things, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of specifically this corridor. And the reason that we're focusing on this Retail Thrive Zone corridor is that we know that a lot of economic activity is boosted when there's a central business district, right? If businesses come together, they can benefit by the shared work of every other business, bringing customers, bringing suppliers, keeping the streets clean, all of that. So we're going to specifically focus on this corridor, and we want it to be as magnificent as possible. But to that end, we want to talk about what are some of the strengths that the corridor has already going on. Those strengths could, and I'll also say this, those strengths have to be things that are controlled by those in the corridor, right? So the residents can control some things, right? You can control how clean your block is, but you can't control whether or not the city provides this grant on an ongoing basis. That's up to the city. So when we're talking about strengths, there are things that are internal to this community, things that are under control. Whether or not it has a strong chamber of commerce could be a strength, because that's something that residents you can control. So, hey guys, I know it's the morning, but we gotta engage. I want to hear from you, what are some of the strengths you think that this corridor has already?
Traffic.
Traffic?
Yeah.
So when you say traffic, you mean high traffic?
The traffic counts
Okay.
down 79th Street.
Anything else?
The residents.
Transportation.
And residents, do you mean like engaged residents?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Okay. Or the number of residents? Engaged or the number? Not engaged. Oh.
But they are.
Engaged.
We're here. Connect the Block is the
So we'll say
it's a Block Club organization.
engaged
Okay.
residents.
Where's
Okay,
Connect the
Connect the
Block?
block.
Connect the Block just came in, so they're here.
Connect the block. Okay, any other strengths in this corridor?
The businesses.
And when you say the businesses, what is strong about them? That they exist?
The ones that have been here and have, like, Jordan's who's been here,
So
the
there's
one who
some-
survived. So there's Nate Kirkwood Taxes, and there are businesses that have been here, Fawcett Communications. They're businesses that have been here for a long time.
So there's an established business history.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And participation on the weekend.
Yeah, the guy that still makes skates on 79th.
Still do,
And-
still does.
Right.
I like the history part of that. That's something that could really go in low into branding. Yeah.
I don't know if it was said, but engaged residents.
Yeah, right here. Any other strengths, something that you think this community does really well already within itself?
We're the largest African-American voting bloc in the state of Illinois and the nation.
Okay, anything else? I think these are the
Proximity to transport, you already got it.
We get transportation. Okay, I think these are some pretty good strengths, but now we're gonna temper that, right? Now we're gonna say, what are we weak at?
Safety.
Safety, okay. And safety, I'm gonna put it under weakness because there's some method of, or there's some type of control we can have over that, but then there's sometimes isn't. So I'll put it under weakness.
Now, I can be more specific when I say safety.
Yeah, be more
It's just- So, there are addiction problems in the community. So the addiction problems are social issues that related to addiction issues. So whether it's drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, addiction issues are a real problem in this community.
Okay, I'll say local addiction issue. And then I'll put under red, safety.
Right.
Because that's too broad. Any other weaknesses of the community?
Yeah.
Okay, too many abandoned storefronts. I can't spell. Pretend that's spelled. All right. Any other weaknesses?
Okay, lack of jobs.
Okay,
Lack of jobs,
so lack of jobs and bad media.
for especially for young black males. The
We
youth.
can't control the media, so I'm gonna put that in the press. I'm writing it down before I forget. Yes.
You can't control it, but it's a problem.
Businesses by the residents.
Hanging out.
So
Lack
out
of
of
support.
Yeah.
Lack of support.
disinvested owners.
That'll work.
Disinvested owners. I'm sorry, I heard something else.
Absentee landlords,
Oh,
loitering.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and then loitering, did I hear?
Yep.
All right, that's a lot of weaknesses.
Oh, we got
That's
one.
okay, because now we get to go back to some good news.
Okay.
Now we're gonna talk about, thank you. And we're gonna come back to weaknesses when we get to our ideation stage. I don't talk about the good things because the good things are the good things, and we don't need to talk about those. But we're gonna go more in depth to the weaknesses and threats after we finish this exercise. So what are some opportunities? Opportunities are good things that could come to the community, but we don't have control over them. So one of those things will be the retail thrive zone, right? The city can say, we don't have enough money to do this anymore, and it goes away. But if it is available, it's an opportunity that we can take advantage of. Does that make sense? So opportunities are good things that can happen, not our control. Okay? So any opportunities? I'll put up retail thrive zone, because that's why we're here today. Any other things?
Well, when new businesses come, new customers, so we're bringing in people into the community
So
to buy.
additional businesses means additional customers.
Right.
And when you say customers, is that an opportunity because they get insight into the community, that they're spending dollars, that they might want to move here? What do you feel like is the best opportunity of bringing customers here? Because customers is good for the business. Absolutely.
I
But
would
how does
say
that?
increase foot traffic for the community.
Okay, so increased foot traffic. So additional owners means more foot traffic.
And it could possibly bring in,
More homeowners.
new homeowners,
Yes.
renters.
More jobs.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely more jobs.
More jobs.
Since you have the retail thrive zone, put the neighborhood opportunity fund in there. Right?
NOF. That's a long word.
Right.
Those are long words. Anything else?
Improve,
I'm sorry? Okay, ideas, more ideas.
improvement in the procurement opportunities from government.
Okay. One of the things that I think of when I hear.
Can I say
I'm
one
sorry.
more thing, about to the variation or variety of, it's the opportunities for a variation of businesses here,
So,
based on our vacancies.
more varied businesses. One of the things that I think of when I think of opportunities, specifically as it relates to communities, is how will infrastructure change, right? So if more businesses come in, does that mean we get better lighting, that we get better streets, that we get better signage?
Better security.
Better security, right? Because you'll have more people who are now requesting that. So I'm going to say improved infrastructure.
And the other opportunities is surrounding development.
Okay.
And the example would be the Obama Center.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I see. So there's an opportunity. I'll put that as an example. Library. And then improved infrastructure. Any other opportunities that you think as a community we would be able to take advantage of?
The lake.
Okay. Right now, I don't, what's lake access like? Is it easy to get to lake or you gotta go to Hyde Park?
Keep walking, you're right. Keep walking.
Yeah.
And a lot of communities, even on the north side, don't have lake access, right?
We got homes right off the lake. We got schools right off the lake.
Yeah.
I guess the transportation again,
Transportation.
because we have access to everything. Bus miles.
So, an opportunity to even make that better. Okay. Any other opportunities?
I think with it being a younger in this area, that can, I'm not worried about it, that can, just a younger age.
So any changes can be longer lasting because there's a longer period of time for individuals to work within it. So I'm gonna say longevity. I don't know if that's the right word, but at least it'll remind me.
So revitalization.
Okay, so longevity and longevity and revitalization.
In line with what she's saying, that's kind of like affordability. Because I've talked to a lot of new professionals that see the opportunity to purchase homes at a very early age because of the price point in certain communities.
Improve quality of life.
So when you say improve quality of life,
For businesses, for jobs.
okay, so improve.
It's a trickle down effect when it is for all of those things. Positive traffic and positive everything.
Okay, any other opportunities that you all see that are available to this community?
Can I ask a question? How
Yes.
organized is your business community? Like, do you all get together? Are you talking about what's going on in the corridor? Is there an opportunity there for a better coordinated business community?
Yep, it is.
That's an opportunity.
Okay, great. I would just.
So,
We
more
need to post something.
organized business
Yeah.
network.
And-
Yep.
Yeah, you know, when to piggyback on what Artie just said, that's actually a weakness of ours.
It is a real
Both
weakness that
from
we
the
don't
business
talk.
community and in our community. We don't have the strong organizations that get together and sustain and come up with these type of, that really focus on these issues.
All right, so we're going to talk a lot about what an organization would mean. What does that look like? Because one of the other things too is there are a lot of small organizations doing small things, right? But if there's some way that we could galvanize that effort such that it accomplishes these opportunities that you have indicated exist, I think that's what you're looking for, right? All right, so a lack of strong business community. Okay, board. All right, any other opportunities? So now, no? All right. So now we're going to go into threats. Threats are bad things that can happen that are not in our control. So when I do this with businesses, Economy is the first one that comes up all the time because we can't control the economy. It can go up, it can go down, but you still have to plan for it. So that's a threat. I put in bad media. We can't control it. We gotta hope that we put good things out there, but until we own a television station or radio station, can't really control it. So I see a hand in the back.
Depopulation.
Depopulation.
Overpriced.
Overpricing of what?
Goods.
So products are too expensive. Is that what you're saying? Are you saying products becoming too expensive?
Yes.
Or even overpricing of just rent, land,
So-
opportunity for business owners in general. Because the property owners are not pricing.
Products overpriced. Anything else?
Uninvested ownership, i.e. gentrification.
So can I ask a question?
Gotta talk about it.
Gentrification, so is it displacement, which is that folks from the community who built up the community can't stay? Or is it actually gentrification, which is other people are moving in? Because sometimes we use those, and I ask because, so sometimes we use those words sort of interchangeably, but I think Abraham made the point, there's sort of depopulation that's happened, particularly in some of our communities of color. Is the point you make on folks not being able to stick around, or is it new people coming in and pushing people out?
Not yet, not yet.
So I ask because, and this is what, let me just ask and then.
So I believe there's two different levels. Residential aspect. You know that a lot of times when you improve business, the taxes go up on the residential area. And then a lot of times we have intergenerations where the first generation was able to handle the tax bracket, and they maybe pass away, the children take it on, they can't handle it.
And it's just that they can't afford the taxes.
That's one.
Okay.
And the other aspect of the commercial side is we build it up, then the business taxes go up, and we're pushed out for other businesses that can't usually afford it, and are usually people that don't live there.
Okay, so I'll call that displacement, which
That's
is
right,
that you
it's
can't.
not gentrification.
There's a tax issue that you can't afford the taxes anymore
I'm not
versus.
limited to that, it's just one aspect.
Okay.
I think additionally, right, with all of the vacancies in both the residential and commercial spaces in this corridor, uninvested owners, people that are coming in to purchase those properties that aren't necessarily residents of the area, right? That's impacting us as well, and I think that that's a part of what she meant when she said gentrification.
No, and I ask out of wanting to know because we do have areas in the city that are both, there are displacement issues, which is I can't afford my taxes on my house anymore. I can't afford my taxes on my commercial property. I'm getting pushed out. And then we're also having issues, which is new folks are coming in and the housing that they're buying is way more expensive to start from. That they're folks who don't look like the folks who've been building up the community, which can work if everyone feels like everyone's welcome. So it's only trying to get at. Thank you. Thank you.
I think once we get an idea what he means, then perhaps we can even define it better. Because what you're saying all relates to depopulation.
No.
So it doesn't make any difference if because of taxes being too high or businesses being not enough.
So it's a culmination of what you already heard from the others, is that depopulation is either from people who can't afford to stay within a certain location because of increasing expenses, increasing lack of affordability, and the other part is too that people, a certain generation moves out. They leave. For the most part. Some of the mom and pops used to be around for 30 years. They leave. Or their children leave. Or their children give it to their children sell it. So there's so many things. Crane just came out with an article that shows the greater far south side lost population of about 100-some-thousand people in the last 15 years. So and that's critical when it comes to services being provided by the city when it comes to taxes, people not having the ability to buy homes. And so when you have that depopulation, a lot of your critical infrastructure projects like street repairs and improvements, resources for small business, that is short as well. Hence also too, schools getting impacted. So when you have that sort of depopulation, there's so many aspects to it. But that is a serious concern that many cities are trying to develop and engage with.
And the real is that it's both by choice and not, right? So there's people who left by choice, who had the abilities, they chose to move out of the city, out of the state, to a different part of the city. And then there are people who are not choosing, who don't have that choice and that freedom to say, I want to stay here, but instead are saying, I want to stay, but I'm not able to. So I think there's also...
And also the last thing too is when we look at the population, we look at families. Sometimes not always families leaving the area. Families are moving in with other families. So whether it's an older generation moving in with their children, or their children, or their grandchildren moving in with them, that also contributes as well. When you're looking at the population, but now that spread to have multiple people spread out in the tax base is now consolidated because people are living in a sort of extended family.
Very good. I like it. I'm just going to say, while he was talking, I put in municipal government. I put in state at first because, it's a state. But there could be changes in the city government where they don't have the same initiative or same dedication to improving communities, as well as Cook County government. They could not become business friendly with all the taxes and all that. So I put in that as a threat. Yes. Crime. Okay. Got that. Yep. Any other threats?
Financial funding. We're not afforded loans, grants, as other businesses and companies, bigger, or even smaller businesses in Hyde Park. The fundings are over there, but not here.
So lack of access to capital. Any other threats? Yeah.
Lack of community investment, right?
When you say community investment, that's individuals investing in their own community?
Absolutely.
Glad you said that. All right, any other threats? All right, so we're going to move it along. We're not going to spend too much more time on this section, but now that all the things in red, so all the weaknesses and threats outlined, it's no good talking about a problem if you don't have a solution or idea for a solution. I know, as already mentioned, there are conversations taking place all the time throughout the community where, where you can talk with friends, family, neighbors about the I wish factor. That's what I call it. Everyone knows, what's his name?
R. Kelly.
Not R. Kelly. The entertainer, Cedric the entertainer, right? He had the hope, right? He was like, I hope someone's in my seat, right? So now we have the I wish. What is it that you wish? It doesn't have to be specifically tied to a weakness or threat at this point, but it should be something that, despite what resources are currently available, you would like to see. Yes.
Every business occupied.
So every space occupied.
Every space occupied.
All right. What else are some ideas about that? You would you wish. Yes.
Well, I guess I wanted to kind of extend off you saying every space occupied, and then we create it, so we don't necessarily get the lease. For everything rented or owned, then we have pop-ups.
Creative placement.
Yeah, and we can have that organized to always be in place, always have, vendors, business owners to be there.
Okay. I wish. You've had this conversation. I know you've had it. Yes.
Restaurants with healthy meals, like salad bars, places where you can eat healthy food without.
Amen.
Do you care if that restaurant is sit down or not?
but it would be nice to have a nice sit-down restaurant. I've been in South Shore for 46 years, and I remember we had Helen's, we had Essence, we had Originals, and then there was another place. And you could go on Sunday if you didn't want to cook, and you could go have a healthy meal, soul food or, salad or whatever, and we don't have that.
And grocery stores.
Let's drink.
Fresh food.
I wish that we will employ our young people within the community to these jobs, provide for the necessary training, and for me going inside the school and encouraging our young people to learn the trade so that they can use what they learn inside classroom into the community.
So it could be a trade or a skill or something.
Training and customer service, I mean.
Yeah, that's a good one. That is a good one. You need to repeat that again. You need to put that in big red, yes.
Yes. So I got a lot of wishes. That's so for those healthy options to also be sit down. When we go to like Wicker Park and the Paul community, there is so concentrated with food, and we sit there and the late hours, but in a more safe environment. So it's not necessarily a club, but it's maybe a sports bar where there's food as well. And people are coming in and out and still want to pass your children and not have to worry about, safe issues with some more concentration, entertainment, food, and maybe like even small youth places to go. I remember having arcades when we were growing up.
Yes.
You know, we see that a lot.
So what I heard you say is a concentrated food district. And I think that has a lot to do with the safety, right? If it's just more people in a space, then it's a safer, I don't know, right?
Yes.
Safer space.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe, if I've heard food at least 4 times now. So it's part of this retail thrive zone if we dedicated an area that was food focused and we tried to encourage businesses that were food based. That might be something we can work on? Maybe? All right, yes. I'm sorry, I'll come to you next. Oh, yeah, you already spoke. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I wish we had a social center, like a hub for the community. My family moved here in the 70s, and I've been in that residence since. And I'm one of the kids that family bought property, passed away, and I took over. And what I see now is new people coming in, time after time. The old residents don't know these people. The new people don't know the old residents, so there's no communication going on. Nobody's watching out. But if we had some place where everyone could meet, one thing I noticed is that the African braid shop right here. I noticed when new Africans come in to Chicago, those people have like a welcome committee that pulls them in, that brings them to the shop, get them set up. We don't do that for our own. So if we had some place, like the lady said, where the young kids could go and learn a trade, and then these new businesses that we're talking about bringing into the community can contact someone and pull the resources from there, sort of like a tip agent. Well, we have those resources in our own community to put jobs, to train the people up, and have the business owners do specials where they bring in kids, teaching them the skill in your businesses. You know, the ones that are surviving and thriving. I don't see a lot of that coming in. Where you have a hair shop, where you have young kids coming in and teach them how to shampoo. How to do that, that's customer service as well. We bring in these new businesses, and what I've seen is that these new So we need a whole special place for our community, for people to gather, have social events, activities, training for them.
Okay, I like that idea. I like it. I'm gonna go to the back.
As individuals, when we get a new neighbor, a new business, and we go out and we welcome them. We have a welcome basket for them, you know, to introduce ourselves and to introduce them to the community and what is involved in the community. With our new businesses, we go into our business. We introduce ourselves to the business and what we expect the business to do from the community. So we can do that as individuals as well as having our social center.
Okay, right here in the back.
I think for arts and tech organizations.
I'm sorry, arts and tech. Oriented spaces or businesses?
Both would be good, yeah. Hey, did you get it in the same? That's not me.
Okay, and what do you mean by tech space?
So, there are phases where they teach young people code.
So it's tech training spaces, because there could also be co-working spaces that are considered tech spaces too. So I heard right over here, so maybe anything that's tech related, a co-working space for businesses or a training space or both.
Yeah, co-working, learning, but also performing arts, cultural arts. I think arts brings people together.
Right. Right here.
Beautification of major thoroughfares.
And then when you say beautification, is that signage, is that landscaping?
That's signage, that's landscaping, that's
Lighting.
yes, lighting, it's
Paints.
yeah, paint, for business facades, like making it look like the place where we want to be.
Got it. And this is also a question that I had as it relates to signage. Do you feel like there's a sense of community with signage here?
With signage creating branding, like
Like a brand, like
yeah,
this
a brand, a community brand.
Yeah.
And I think that is it solidifies, you know. Yes. No, we don't see it though. Yeah, so I would wish that certainly.
All right. We're going to hurry up and end this session because we're already at 11. So just a few more I wishes, and then we'll talk about the opportunity to make some of these things happen. Yeah.
You need a MESBIC, a MESBIC, because we're being economically redlined.
You don't have to say that again.
MESBIC, MESBIC. Because
What is that?
it's a Minority Economic Small Business Investment Corporation. Because you're being economically redlined by the banks, you don't have any money to give this to business. You don't have any businesses to create taxes. They close your schools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Got it.
Now, most of the people in our community work, and they are, let's say, middle income. But the contractors, you know, you have to graduate from being a worker to a contractor. And that's why I said in the construction part and the business part, we don't get our representative share from the city, the state, and the county. So you need to have contractors financing in order to hire your own people.
So that sounds like capacity building.
Right. Now, in terms of STEM, the lady talked about STEM and it's STEAM now. We have at CBCA, through Michelle and Greg, CBS High School is a leader in the world, not just not just Chicago, the world. We got it right here on so you can go to CBCA High School and do that. So, okay. But all your problems resolve around lack of money.
That sums that up.
Okay, I'm gonna take 2 more wishes. Yeah.
I think one thing that we don't have is there are a lot of vacant lots, like gardens, that people where you can plant things, plant vegetables, plant food. And just for growth.
Okay, so like a community garden or farmer's market. I don't like the farmer's market because it has a certain connotation, but we know what it means here. So like people who are their own. Anything else? One more, last one. Yep.
I think also too, if there's a connectivity between large businesses and small businesses, so that therefore resources can be, partnerships can be formed, so that small businesses can be able to have opportunities that larger companies have. Because a lot of these companies, even out of our neighborhoods, are more on a global level. And I believe having resources being spawned into our neighborhood, also in partnerships, also will bring those resources and funding and availability, so that therefore we can compete in the marketplace like all the other groups.
All right. So, I'm sorry?
It's like business mentorships.
Yeah, I like that. He said business mentorship. Okay. All right. So, we have our wish list. Now, this was a longer session. I do strategic planning sessions the last 2 days. We don't have today. So, what we'll do is we'll probably do a follow-up and you'll be invited to host that. But at this time, what I'd like to do is some of these things are possible right now via the opportunity that's given or that is being provided to us via the retail drive zone. We can create a business district that has some of these, the art aspect, the tech aspect, the food aspect, the safety aspect, the beautification aspect. So I'm going to have Artie from the Department of Planning and Development and Jake, sure, yeah. Jake is from Summer Corps and he helps with the financing portion. Come up to talk to you about this program, how you can apply, when you have to apply by, what helps you put together the best application. And then in follow-up meetings, we'll have some more strategic planning around helping you identify the space, getting you the resources, the suppliers, the vendors to beautify that space, and so forth. So thank you. We at Far South are going to take all of these things and try and make them happen for you. Can't promise you stuff. It's not going to be tomorrow, right? But we will work on it. I hope that I have your support in doing that. Oh, my contact information. If you are looking for free, no strings attached, business assistance, whether it's planning, financing, marketing, strategy, you can visit us. Our office currently is at 9923 South Halsted in Suite, where is it? D. I just know that. Right? Suite D. So it's right off 57 and 57 at the Halsted exit. And you can reach me. My name again is Florence Hardy. I'll spell it. You can't see? Okay. I'll spell it. Florence. So Florence, just like in Italy. Hardy is Hardy. You can reach me at Florence at Far South, C as in cat, D as in dog, C as in cat, .org. So it's Florence at farsouth.org. Or you can reach me by phone, 773-941-4833. 773-941-4833.
And do that email one more time, Florence.
Florence at Far, F-A-R, South, like South Side. C as in cat, D as in dog, C as in cat. So farsouthcdc.org.
Say it one more time.
Probably should write it too.
C as in cat, D as in dog.
I think she need to write it. She need to write it.
farsouthcdc.org is our website. And just put Florence like Italy in front. Okay, so I hope you found this helpful. Yeah. We're just ideation here. But we're going to work with you through this program and through other programs to hopefully make all this come to fruition. So thank you so much for your time.
I'm Abraham Lacey, the Executive Director of Farm South CDC. We're very grateful for the city and their partnership with the Alderman's office for really helping us get this off the ground. And Florence is amazing, so please, we get the other thing too, starting in January, thanks to the Department of Planning and Development and the Department of Business Affairs and to our Alderman's offices, we're going to be offering classes from January through May. It's mainly centered around the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, but it has some of the same components that the Retail Thrive program. Those classes are what's going to teach you, and we have, when it comes to finding a property, some of you may be interested in obtaining or acquiring a property. We have a realtor that's going to be able to teach you how to search for the right property. The other is when it comes to contractors, when it comes to how to bid for certain projects, how to monitor certain projects. We have someone there to be able to teach you. And the same other portion is budgeting. So if you need assistance in budgeting, when it comes to how to set financial statements and how to set a sort of project management level, we'll be able to teach you that. And lastly, we'll be able to teach you how the whole process itself, like what they're going to explain, as well as when it comes to marketing and branding. So those classes are going to go, if you go to our website, we have if you signed in, and I don't know where the sign-up sheet is, but if you have signed in, if you haven't, please sign in. We can send you information about those classes and that you can sign up for. They're free. You can come there, you sign up. I think we have a capacity of 15. So it's free, so please join in when you can. All right, thank you. She's trying to hide. This is our director of
So I got a quick question before they start. Quick question. How did everybody hear about this? I'm trying to figure out the best way that we communicate.
Flyer,
Social media?
Facebook,
Email?
Facebook, email.
The Alderman.
And the Alderman? Newsletter? What else? Got it. All right. So how do you get us? I'm sorry, what was that?
We got a text from the 8th Ward.
All right, great. So what's the best way? Text, email?
Yes.
Great.
Text works for me.
Oh, I have a question.
And you know, Connect the Block does a great phone blast, so we'll work with Connect the Block as well.
And just a little bit more specific. We also did flyering. Did anyone?
Yeah, we did flyering.
I didn't get a flyer though.
Flyers still work.
I didn't get the
That's
flyer.
all.
Right.
So, go ahead. So again, what we're going to talk about now is actually trying, it's what I mentioned in the beginning, which is we're going to try working with all of you and working with Far South CDC and the Alderman's offices, how to lift some of what you've talked about off the pages that are in front of you. And so what we've been doing for the last, it's been about a year and a half to about 2 years, Jake and myself and Corrine for the last year, and Far South CDC with Abraham, and then after Florence joined with Florence, we have been working on particularly 8 commercial corridors around the city on the south, southwest, and west sides. And the idea of it is what I talked about earlier today, which is how do we, as the city, lean in to the neighborhoods that need us the most, and in leaning in, try to support our commercial corridors, which are the hubs of our community often, and do it by supporting a couple things. A, building community wealth in those neighborhoods. B, supporting entrepreneurs of color. And C, stacking the leverage that we have at the city and everything we're doing so that we're all rowing in the same direction. So the way that we did that, so I'll give you just 2 seconds of how the program was started. So Retail Thrive Zones, again, it's in 8 corridors on the south, southwest, and west sides, and 79 from the boundaries that Florence mentioned is one of those Thrive Zones. We've done it in partnership with Alderman Harris and with Alderman Mitchell, and we've done it in partnership with Far South CDC as our partner. We are not the ones who need to guess at what you need or don't need. That's you all. We need to just listen, and we need to work with you, and we need to try to make your dreams happen as your proud partners. We know that, the mayor knows that, and so at the core of this program is working with the community organization and a partner who is going to work with all of you to do exactly what Florence did today. This is the beginning of this process, and we will only be as successful as you are engaged. So we ask you to continue to be our partner, and we're going to talk to you about what that means and what we can bring to the table. But the core of the program was, how do we support people in the neighborhood and build their wealth so that there isn't displacement, so that people who built the neighborhood stay in the neighborhood, that our neighborhoods are better with those on whose backs it's built. Number two, how do we love and support our entrepreneurs of color? And number three, how do we bring all of the resources and leverage of the city to do it all well, and to do it so that it's not you do one thing over here and then 5 years later you do one thing over here. We do that a lot as communities and as government, so we're trying to get better. So a couple of the sort of guiding principles. Number one, it had to be around blocks, block by block. Every neighborhood, whatever it is, the place that you're talking about is really, it is only as good as the blocks you're talking about. So for us, we picked the set of blocks on 79th because we wanted to work with a set of property owners. We wanted to work with people who are focused on businesses there. We also can't do everything everywhere. Abraham mentioned, and there's a reality of the fact we've lost population in our communities of color, particularly on the south and west sides. And so what we need to do with retail and commercial, anything that builds up corridors, is to focus them around nodes. The Alderman Harris mentioned this, which is that we drive and we stop, and how do you do multiple things with one drive? Because if you need to drive and then get back in your car and then drive again and get back, you're going to the suburbs. You're not staying in the city, you're not staying on 79. So how do we push all of the activity towards these commercial nodes? And that's not unique to 79. That's what we're doing all across the city. And you have some areas where the population density is stronger, and so you're able to have more of it. But even, you mentioned Ricker Park, it's still around Damon and Division. It's still around North Milwaukee. It's not spread everywhere. There's still, you get out and then you get off the train and you walk around and you're able to hit all of that in the same walk. So we're trying to do that in communities of color where we have stretched out. So the couple strategies that I'll talk about, and then Jake will join me as we talk about them. So the first strategy was about, for us, access to capital. So this is not, and then you all have been in this mode all morning, and so I know that this will land well. But this is not the only thing we're doing as the city. It's not all answers to all things. We know that. We get it. It is our attempt, though, particularly on an economic development basis, which is what I do at DPD and now what I do in the mayor's office. It is, for me, it is part of what we need to do. So when I'm telling you things, don't think, oh, that's not going to solve everything, because we don't think that. But one of the things that's critical is access to capital, particularly for people of color. I don't need to tell all of you of a century of systemic racism and pushing folks out, whether that is through housing, whether that is through lending. There's a whole long list of how we've not done what we should as a country. So we know that access to capital is key. So one of the things that we're doing is starting a program, or what we've done is start the Retail Thrive Zones program, and the first piece of it as a program is sort of expanding a program that currently exists called the Small Business Improvement Fund. Is anyone in the room familiar with this? So it's funded by tax increment financing, which is a much maligned, much misunderstood program that's a key economic development resource for us. There's actually the Avalon Park South Shore TIF has a SPIF going. There's actually about $200,000 in it that is left to sort of be rerun again, just as a heads up for anyone who's not exactly in the Thrive Zone. But that program is intended to do small grants, and I'll throw it over to Jake just to explain it. But that program is intended to do small grants to businesses and property owners, and the goal of it is a couple things. And let me back up one sec. For Retail Thrive Zones, I talked about how we're focused on communities of color, how we're focused on entrepreneurs of color. We're also focused, and you all talked about this, you have it when you talk about not just wanting a busy 79th, but wanting it busy with the things that you want. The goal of Retail Thrive Zones, so we pick these words very carefully, is inclusively vibrant commercial corridors that build community wealth. What's that mean? Inclusively means that the folks who are in the neighborhood continue to support and be a part of and benefit from any growth that happens. Vibrant means that it's not just that the commercial corridor is filled. Whatever it is you think 79th has enough of, it's not just adding one more of those. It's about having things that are vibrant, and you all talked about it. It is restaurants with healthy food. It's gathering spaces where people can actually sit down. It is places where you have a social hub where people can say, welcome, how are you? I haven't seen your face here before, but I saw you in the salon the other day and I wanted to say hello. How do we build community when all of us are in our homes? We don't. We know that. And so it's whatever it is, but it's not anything, right? It's not whatever, in some communities, it's not another currency exchange. It's not another nail salon. It's not whatever that might be. It's whatever for you makes it feel like. There's an informal way that I talk about it, which is like, damn, I'm glad I went there. I don't know
Damn, I want to go in there.
Damn, I want to go in there. There's a lot of dams. Sorry for being in the church. Sorry.
All right. Yeah, you getting us all in trouble.
Yes, I know. We're going to walk out in the pool. Yes, so it is that feeling, and that's what we want. And you all have identified a lot of the ways in which we can do that. Art is absolutely a way. We know, particularly in communities of color, where you cannot duplicate the art, the visual art, the music, the dance. That is one of the beauties that we have in the city, that across the city of cultures of every color, that we offer that, and if we're strong enough in it, we're willing to share. If I don't think you're going to take it from me, then that gift is extraordinary, to actually say, I will share with you what my family did for centuries in dance and in music and in art, all those things. So that is whatever that feels like for all of you, and that's different from community to community. We don't assume that what you need on 79th is the same as what you need on 63rd, is the same as what you need on 47th and back of the arts. It's why we work with community partners like the Far South CDC and Alderman's offices like Alderman Harris and Alderman Mitchell, because you all get to define what that is. So all that is background. Then we go into the capital, and the only reason I wanted to say all of that was that it's not just capital to get it in, it's guided capital. It is capital that will achieve a lot of the things that you've been talking about, which is building up entrepreneurs of color, getting vibrancy back in corridors. So I'll throw it over to Jake just to talk about the program for a second. We'll then talk about a little bit of timing, and then we'll go into what else the Thrive Zone is going to do. It's a 3-year pilot, so there's still, you all are starting a little bit later, but they'll still be about a year and a half. And then we'll talk a little bit about Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, and then we'll be available for questions. But the goal right now of our part of the presentation is to help you pull off these pages what you want to do, and do everything we can to wrap our arms around you and earn your trust that we're in it with you. That's really what it is. It's that basic. So in every way that we can, we want to support your dreams and support what you want for your own neighborhoods as you live here, as you own your property. We want to build your wealth so that you continue to stay here. That's the goal. Does that make sense? Yeah. Sound like, okay. So Jake will tell you a little bit about SPIF and particularly Thrive Zone SPIF.
So whether you're a tenant in the corridor now or a prospective tenant, you want to start a business there, or whether you own a property where you're operating a business, or you want to buy one where you want to operate your business, perhaps you're a property owner that wants to fix up the building to bring in one of these tenants that fit the vision you guys have. Putting the investment into these buildings to do so is a tremendous investment. As you know, some of these projects can be $100,000 plus, and no one suspects that that's easy to pull off. So what this program is it's a tool to make that investment more accessible and more obtainable. This program actually provides grants with a maximum limit of up to $250,000. It's not a silver bullet. It is not a handout to say, hey, go ahead, make it happen. It is a tool to leverage in getting financing you need outside of the grant funds to make this a reality. But things like your heating and cooling systems, your plumbing, your storefront, fixing your facade, your roof, all the things that you need to do to have a vibrant space that is functional, those are big capital investments. So these grants are really intended to be used to help address those things, make the spaces warm and inviting and functional. They are, however, reimbursement grants. So it is not money to just go spend on a project however you'd like. It's you apply for a specific project in mind. So if you're a startup business, you have a business concept, and you also have a budget for your project. If you're an existing business, you have to get bids, and that is what you're applying for, assistance with that project. If you're a landlord, and you might want to think about what type of tenant you need, and maybe find that tenant, and figure out how the space is going to work and make it accessible for that tenant you're targeting.
And so just a couple things of context. So the idea of why we do HVAC and roofing and any of that is that we want the corridor to be strong. So anything you can take with you is not something that we're going to pay for, because we hope your business thrives and survives and does really well. In the event that it does and you move to a different space that's bigger, or in the unfortunate event if something happens, we want the corridor to stay strong. So we want our taxpayer, your taxpayer dollars, to go towards what makes the corridor stronger. So for a lot of the abandoned storefronts you talked about, if someone can get them or rent them and the roof gets better and the HVAC gets better, then if you choose to stay there or not, when the next person comes in, they are that much likelier to move on 79th because the corridor looks strong, feels strong, the facades are in good shape, the windows are clear, it's inviting, and it's welcoming. So that's one. Two, and Jake's done a lot of the work on this with another of our colleagues, while it's reimbursement, because it's TIF dollars, which there's always stories about how TIF sucks, and there's people ignore how critical of a tool it is, particularly for communities of color. It's reimbursable because that's the way for us to be assured that you've done it. However, we know that, again, I talked about access to capital. It's not just our equity that's coming in, which is a grant, which is great, but that you might need help on the front end. We've worked with 8 lenders who are some mission-oriented, who are community development financial institutions, some sort of more typical banks, and we have asked all of them to be in this with us to adjust their underwriting criteria, to honor their requirements of the Community Reinvestment Act, to be better partners in the communities that they make money off of, or that they are mission-oriented, required to do work in, and to get in it with us. So we actually have 8 lenders. That list continues to get longer. We have all of the terms of their loans up on the website, all of them. So you don't have to go and say, "Lo, I got to go get a meeting with MB, and then I've got to go meet with CCLF, and then no." All their terms, we've done that work for you, because the goal was so that you weren't hitting your head up against the wall trying to understand what their terms are. So if you don't have the other half of the capital to match a grant or the other whatever percentage it ends up being, we have lenders who have told us that they're in it. That'll only be as good as the loans they do. We get that. But first steps first. We got to bring them to the table, bring you to the table and say, "Hey, here's your entrepreneur. We need your help." So we have done that work because we've wanted you to spend your time on business planning, on finding the right location, on talking to the landlord, on getting bids. You got to get bids because we got to make sure that you're not just, that our money is going towards an appropriate and sort of average cost, that you're not paying super high end, things like that. So every rule has some context to it. I like to give you the context just so that you understand where we're coming from in trying to run the program. Does that all sort of make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
If I could just illustrate how this grant, helps provide access to capital. So you have lenders with their terms and information out there. Just because they're on there doesn't mean that it's 100% guaranteed, to be real. But they are on with this mission. They want to do these projects. And how these grants can actually be leveraged is, typically, the grant is 75% of your project cost. So if your HVAC, your plumbing, and your storefront, and your roofing is, let's say, $100,000, in that scenario, you'd have a grant that would be $75,000. So you'd have a lender say, one scenario would be, okay, so $75,000 will be funded by the city, and they'll have a letter to refer to that says, here's the grant amount, here's the conditions of the grant and what it can be used for, so they understand the terms, so they're not walking into it blind. They say, okay, we'll do the $75,000. You may need to come up with that $25,000, which is not easy, but it's easier than $100 for sure. Or maybe you're in a situation where you can get $90,000 or 95 or 100 even, if that $25,000, that 25% piece is something that you can manage with monthly payments after the grant project is done. So it's a little bit case by case, but in the first example where they just say, okay, $75,000 the grant amount, the city's going to provide that, we're going to provide the bridge. So we'll fund the project, we'll do disbursements to your contractor, and then in the end, the city's going to step in and pay off your loan, or pay off a part of it. So it's sort of a pseudo form of collateral. They understand the terms of the grant, and they'll extend a bridge to help get the project done up front. So
And we're doing that with grant equity. There's a lot of conversations increasingly about debt. At the end of the day, what we're trying to do with one program in one small way is to actually kind of shift back to address the decades of underinvestment and disinvestment. And that's on an equity basis. And so if you have communities of color that have not built up equity over the years because they were redlined out of buying homes that actually did accelerate in their value, because they were not included in school programs, whatever that, again, long list of how we haven't lived up to our charter. But the goal for us is to come in as equity. It's grant money. Our piece is grant money. So the requirements that you have is to stick around. It's a 3-year, you can't move. You said you're going to improve 79th, you got to keep improving 79. Things like that. You can't just sell it and get out. And so there are some of those rules, and we'll go into more of those details when we're launching the program. But that's sort of the basics that we wanted to let you know per your conversation that Florence facilitated, kind of how we can help you pull some of this off the page. So the Alderman Harris and Alderman Mitchell with the mayor are really leading this effort. They are doing their best, and the mayor in particular on the banks is holding them accountable to say, you're working with us, you have our business, you're in our city, you have to care for all of our city. And to Alderman Harris and Alderman Mitchell's credit, we've really been working with them to try to push this ahead to get these resources out. And so they have been pushing us to move this quickly. So we will be rolling out the Thrive Zone SPIF that we're talking about January 11th. That's just going to be the first meeting. You'll get far more details. So if you want to start doing your work of what property, and there's a website that you can look at called retailthrivezones.com.
Just Thrive Zones.
Or just thrivezones.com.
Sorry.
Thrivezones.com. I think Retail Thrive Zones will loop you there.
Okay.
Yeah, but Thrive Zones, THRIVE zones.com. And Florence and Far South CDC, when you guys do the notes, you'll include that in there. And you'll keep hearing that in upcoming meetings. But the Alderman actually on their way out wanted to make sure that we had a date. We actually should have checked it too with Florence, who's our. But okay, it works for them. We kind of do works for the Alderman. It works for us. So we figured that out. But after that point, that'll be the starting meeting, and then you'll have about 4 to 6 weeks to then get materials, ask Jake and his colleagues questions, sit down with Florence when she's saying, oh, you all are going to be coming in, working on your business plan with her, with Abraham, with their colleagues. That's the time that you'll have. So there is $1 million in funding that will go out across the Retail Thrive Zone. Jake mentioned that those grants are up to $250,000. Our average grant size is about $40,000, which is as much about need as it is about availability. So we'll see sort of how many grants that turns into. But there's the Thrive Zone program that 79th, to the credit of Alderman Harris and Alderman Mitchell, is here in this community. It's one of the chosen 8 pilots. And it was key for us to have a strong partner. So we also, again, remain very thankful for Far South CDC. So that's Thrive Zone SPIF. Just looking at time. Anyone have questions on that? And we might park and punt some of them if they're specific. But so we'll take a couple, and then we'll go into Neighborhood Opportunity Fund for just a couple minutes. And then we're going to leave it open for any other questions, and sort of Florence will tell us when to wrap up. Yes, ma'am.
The contractors, are they provided by the city, or can I become a contractor?
As long as they're licensed and bonded. Bonded?
Insured.
Just insured.
Yeah.
Licensed and insured. You're fine.
Okay.
And then you still have to get 2 bids. So even if you have a favorite contractor, we need to make sure that your price from your favorite contractor is a good price. We're sure it is, but we need to know that. So we still require you to get multiple bids. But it doesn't need to be, it's not required to be. a minority contractor. We obviously prefer that to build the policy objectives of building community wealth, but we wanted to balance having too many rules that you felt like you were getting suffocated, and not enough rules that we didn't have any control, and that was our balance. Yes, ma'am. It's $1 million for the 79th Street Retail Thrive Zone.
And that's from where to where?
And that's also on thrivezones.com. You can open up the map and pull it up, but it procure to exchange all on 79.
I was gonna ask you that. So does it have to be on 79?
It does indeed.
Okay, it can't be on 76.
It cannot. And the reason for that is the strategy. So we'll get to potentially 76, I'm not sure, when we get to Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. But that was part of the point. We needed to pick, and it's all imperfect because there's blocks that we didn't pick. What we tried to do is looking at the data to try to pick areas where there was a density of businesses already so that we could push. 79th was our most ambitious because you can't only always start where everything's already moving. We're trying to start in places where we're trying to get things started. So it is only 79th in those with those two boundaries. Yes, sir.
Notice that there's listings for properties that are completely commercial, and then the ones that are mixed use.
Right.
Are those eligible as well?
Yeah, so the question was, for anyone who couldn't hear it, are mixed-use properties eligible? The answer is that the first floor is. And so this program is focused on commercial. It's focused on building the commercial corridor. Part of the reason for focusing the resources of this on the first floor of a building that's commercial and not the residential above it, there's a few reasons. Number one, there's a lot of resources, at least on the books, for housing. There aren't for entrepreneurs. There aren't for commercial. TIF is really the only one. And so there are other pieces of that stack that other resources can attribute to, number one. So if you're doing the roof, you still need a decent roof for your first floor commercial. It'll be prorated as to the rest of the property, and we'll only pay that portion of the roof that's attributable to the first floor. If you live in the same building that you are asking for funding in, we're going to be particularly careful that nothing that we do benefits you as a homeowner, because that's not the point of this. It's to benefit the first floor. So we will be particularly careful with the rules of how much we will pay for when it's owner occupied. We want to support you owning your own building. We also don't want to be suckers and pay for things that we shouldn't pay for with taxpayer money that benefit a homeowner that don't benefit the entire community on the first floor. It's a super official rule of trying to not be suckers. Any other questions on Thrive Zone Spiff? January 11th, time and date, you're actually going to get, or time and location, you're going to get from both the Alderman's offices as well as Far South CDC when we figure that out. But it's going to be in either the 7th or 8th ward, maybe here. And you'll get that information, but January 11th.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock? Look at that, right?
We gotta work out.
Florence tells us
January 11th is what we.
Florence tells us what to do. I say with all due respect, I'll put one. Anything else on Thrive Zone Spiff?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to this, you are just going to exchange, because my business is east of exchange.
So there's always going to be one block we didn't include, one area we didn't, and so really we tried. This is actually the longest and broadest Thrive Zone that we have. They're actually often much smaller, and we to both Alderman Harris and Alderman Mitchell wanted to make sure that there were multiple opportunities, and so for us. That's you always have to draw the line somewhere, and for us we drew it to exchange, just looking at the density of businesses. But that's a good segue. Let me segue into another tool that we have, the application for which ends on December 22nd, called the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. You're going to hear some common themes. And so while we were working on Retail Thrive Zones, which is place-based in eight locations around the South, Southwest, and West Side, we've also been standing up the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, which is another grant program targeted towards the South, Southwest, and West Sides. For a lot of us working on this, the reason we're in public service is to work where we're most needed, and so that has been our charge in guiding anything that we're a part of. Neighborhood Opportunity Fund is a far broader program in terms of geography. You can go to neighborhoodopportunityfund.com and find out if your business is in an eligible area. The areas are those of concentrated and sustained poverty. And the goals of the program are going to sound pretty familiar. Inclusively vibrant commercial corridors where we support building community wealth and we support Black and brown entrepreneurs. And so the goal is the same. It is to make sure that we are supporting uses like sit-down restaurants, like arts and culture, and that's another opportunity where we come in with you half and potentially up to 65% because in creating the program, we've added what I call a build community wealth kicker. And so you get reimbursed on the front end if you are actually owning the business, if you are living in an area of concentrated and sustained poverty because we want to lift you up. If you're living in Homewood and you own a business on 79th or you own a property on 79th and you're still hiring folks from the community, which you all had in one of your solutions, which is particularly, I think Pam, you had talked about including young people, training them, having them be engaged. We want you to do that, and so there's a way that you'll actually get reimbursed for that hiring after you've shown us that you've hired them and they've stayed. So I recommend to all of you, Abraham and Florence and Far South CDC can walk you through that application. It's a short application. We were again very focused on not having people feel like it was onerous, that it was inaccessible, that we talked about money being available, but as soon as you went online, everything looked hard and felt hard. Our goal with it's the same idea, which is that we want to wrap our arms around entrepreneurs of color. You all are loud over there. I can hear you. Wrap our arms. The love's only for these people. You all are right on this. That we wrap our arms around you so that things feel easier, and we have some of the same banks that have agreed.
I have a question. The
yes,
extra
ma'am.
component that's built into the neighborhood opportunity fund, is it built into the drive zone also?
The hiring piece?
Yes.
It is not.
Okay.
No, it's just NOF. So TIF is tougher in terms of our rules because it's taxpayer money. The Neighborhood Opportunity Fund it is a source of funding that we created. We turned, to the mayor's credit, it was turning straw into gold. What we've done is require people who want to build higher downtown, every crane that goes up, the higher you want to build that's beyond the zoning code right now, you used to have to do stuff around your building, build a winter garden or build some passageway so people wouldn't have to be in the cold. We think people would have done that anyway, and so instead what we said is, no, you got to pay. 80% of it goes to the neighborhoods that need it the most, South, Southwest, and West Sides. Black and brown entrepreneurs, figuring out how to support commercial corridors. 10% of it goes to a citywide Adopt a Landmark fund, and 10% of it goes to that location, that immediate neighborhood, which is bearing the brunt of a taller building and everything that brings, so it makes sense for some of the resources to go there, just not all of them. And that's the way that the mayor has really tried to focus. He's brought so many businesses downtown, which is critical for us to have a strong central business district, but we've needed to figure out how to draw all of that and leverage it into our communities, and this is a way. So our first round went out in earlier this year. It's $3.2 million for 32 businesses. The celebration that we had, sort of honoring all those businesses, was 95% Black and brown entrepreneurs. It was a really good day. It's a really good day when you walk up to people and you can support their dreams. We're working with them now to get them capital, to get them loans. The mayor just signed a letter of support for someone who is applying for a training program through the University of Chicago, because just the fact that you got the grant doesn't mean you still don't need you still need help on whatever it might be, business planning or marketing or e-commerce or whatever that is. And our goal is to support their family does, to support our inaugural class in every way that we can. So that program, again, the application deadline is December 22nd. There's a lot of information on the website, but again, Far South CDC is a terrific partner. Do not do this alone. You saw how amazing Florence is. Abraham's pretty good as well. And so it's hard. Florence sets the bar high, man.
I will say one thing because of the date that you provided. It is due on the 22nd. Our office closes on the 15th, and I don't have any more appointments. However, I will do a bonus for you. I will come into work on the day that we have off on Wednesday, the 20th, to review your application if you wanted to.
Abraham, what are you doing?
He's watching her.
Where does the business have to be for this funding?
So the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, it's generally areas of concentrated and sustained poverty on the south, southwest, and west sides. And a couple other things. You've got to be, if you're applying for a grant, which the only grants we've given out so far are $250,000 or below, because we've not had, there's a lot of money in the pipeline, but we've only had a couple million. So if you were applying for 250 or below, you have to be in a qualified area of concentrated and sustained poverty, and that's on the website. You also have to be located on an eligible commercial corridor. Because of all the reasons I talked about with Thrive, if you're doing something over here, that doesn't help us. We need to focus all of our energy around commercial areas. So you have to be on an eligible commercial corridor, and then in a perfect world, you're actually on a priority investment corridor, which means there's a density of businesses around you. That is not a requirement, because not every community is at a place where their commercial corridor is strong enough to have a density of businesses, and we get that. But everybody has zoned commercial corridors. So we don't want you doing something for a smaller grant, and it's only small in this world, it's still $250,000. We don't want you doing something with a smaller grant that is not on the commercial corridor. We make exceptions potentially for the larger grants, because what if you're using a school that you're reusing? What if there's an arts organization that will draw people and they will go to a destination? So we understand for larger grants. So you just have to put your address in to neighborhoodopportunityfund.com. And then when you learn the rules, if you look at the thrivezones.com website and you look a little bit, or you talk to Abraham or Florence or their colleagues, and you see one program may be better than the other, and you just have to figure out which might be better. You're unlikely to get both a Thrive Zone SPIF grant and a Neighborhood Opportunity Fund grant. Because as soon as you get above 250, you've got to it's a completely different process that requires going through City Council. When Alderman Mitchell talked about how we were fortunate to have his and Alderman Harris's support of the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, because we did have a couple people vote against it, which I don't really get, but that's okay. They were terrific supporters, and one of the requirements was that for any larger amounts of over 250, that we need to go back through City Council. So it's a different process. Any other questions? Again, the website is pretty robust. Yes, ma'am.
You can only submit the application online?
For Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, that's right, and that'll practically be the way for Thrive Zones as well, following January 11th. Anyone else? Any other questions as we wrap up?
The deadlines are.
So the deadline for this is going to be a quiz now. Deadline for Neighborhood Opportunity Fund. Can somebody help me out?
In a second.
But you need to call
and then
her.
Thrive Zones. When is going to be the rollout for Thrive Zone SPIF?
January 11th.
January 11th. You got it. And so the rollout for Thrive Zone SPIF, that's going to be the beginning. So January 11th is not the deadline. That is the date where we're going to have another session that probably here we say with gratitude. Yes. And it'll be the time where we explain it in much more detail. But you've got a good period of time between now and then to start thinking about what you want to do, how you would pull it off, what your plan is, what help you need, so that when you talk to Florence or Abraham, that you can figure that out. Anything else? Okay. We stand up here grateful. You guys, I know that one of the conversations was that you're working on a stronger business community, and particularly with Alderman Harris and Alderman Mitchell. That is what we hope Far South CDC will help you as facilitators to really bring your vision to life. But I give you all credit for making time in your day to start and sort of continue this conversation, because again, we're only as successful as your engagement. So we thank you for your time and for having us.
That it? Good. All right, so thank you, everybody. We got everybody signed in, correct? Thank you.